Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we are diving deep into JavaScript's data types. JavaScript is a dynamically typed language, which means that we don't need to specify the data type of a variable when we are declaring it. The type is automatically determined at runtime based on the value assigned. Understanding data types is fundamental because it helps us managing variables correctly, avoiding some unexpected bugs, and writing clean and efficient code. In JavaScript, data types are categorized into two parts: permittive data types and non-permittive data types. Permittive data types including string, number, boolean, null, undefined, symbol, and BigInt. All these are permittive data types. They can store single and immutable values. Whereas non-permittive data types are including objects, arrays, and functions. These non-permittive data types can store multiple values and more complex data structures. Mastering these data types forms the foundation for working with variables, functions, and advanced programming concepts in JavaScript. So let's get started. In this video, we are going to discuss permittive data types. We will cover non-permittive data types later. In permittive data types, first we talk about strings. So what is string? In JavaScript, string is a sequence of characters that is used to represent text. We can create strings by using single quotes, double quotes, and backticks. Let's come to the VS Code and we will see that how we can create the strings. Okay, in VS Code, first we create a file and name this file datatypes.js. Okay, so let's create some strings. First of all, I write a variable A, and I create string using single quotes. I write single quotes and I create a string. I enter text data. Now you will see, as long as I will save the file, so you see the single quotes are converted into double quotes. So you can see that single quotes are converted into double quotes. So this is the inbuilt feature in the VS Code. If I console string console.log a, and we can also check the data type of the string. So if we console.log type of a, we can also check the data type, that what is the data type of the variable a. So let's save this file. We can run the file using node datatypes.js. So you see the text data that we enter into the variable a, that is also printed in the console, and the data type of the variable is also printed, which is string. Now we will create a string using backticks. So we enter let b is equal to, we are using backtick, and we enter another text data. So similarly, we move this one here, and instead of a, we want to check the value of b, and we also want to check the type of the variable b. So let's save the file. So you can see the text data that we enter into the b variable, this is a second string that is also printed, and the type of variable b, that is also printed, which is string. The interesting thing is that whenever we are creating the variable or whenever creating the string using backticks, so in this string, we can also insert the value of the variable. So how to do this? So let's create a variable, another variable C, and we write here any text data, a country name, which is Dubai. So we can use the value of C inside this string. So how to do this? So let's clear it. So inside backticks, I can write living in. So here we want to write Dubai, but instead of writing text data Dubai, I want to use the value of the variable C, which is Dubai. How we can embed the value of C inside that string? So I write $, curly braces. Inside curly braces, we will write the name of the variable whose value we want to use. So in our case, we write C. If I console the value of B, and I will also check the type of B, save the file, run the code. I am living in Dubai. and the data type of the variable is also string. So what is happening? I am living in the Dubai. So instead of C, the value of C is being used inside that string. That's how backtick works or template literal works. As you see, all the three ways for creating strings works, but backticks allow us to use template literals for embedding variables easily. Strings in JavaScript are immutable. It means that we can't change the individual characters directly. Now let's see some common string methods that we are using almost daily. So first of all, we will use dot length property of the string. Let name is equal to, I write my name. So now we will check the dot length property. So if I console.log and I write name dot length. So if I save the file and run the file, so you see it is showing that how many characters are there. So there are 15 characters in my name. So dot length property will tell us that how many characters are inside the string. The next one is dot to uppercase. Dot to uppercase method is used to make all the characters in the capital letters. So if I use this method, name dot to uppercase, if I save the file and we will run the code, so you see all the letters are converted into capital letters. That is because of the dot to uppercase method. Similarly, we can also use the dot to lowercase method. So instead of dot to uppercase, we write dot to lowercase. If we run the file, so you see, first all the letters are being capital and then all the letters are being small letters. So here you see, first we are using dot uppercase method and then we are using dot to lowercase method. So first all the letters are being capital and then all the letters are converted into lowercase. The next is dot include method. With the help of dot include method, we can check whether the specific word will be existing inside the string. For example, if I create a variable place and the place is United Arab Emirates. So now I want to check that whether the word Emirates exists in my string or not. I will use the dot include method. So if I write place dot includes and I have to mention that word. In our case, I want to check the word Emirates. So let's copy this word and paste here. So now I want to check that either Emirates word existing in my string or not. If this word exists in my string, it will return true, either it will return false. Dot include method always gives us the output in the Boolean form. So let's save the file and run the file. So you see, it is giving us true. So this means that this word existing in our string. So what if I change the word? So now I will write the word which is not present in my string. So if I write Dubai and let's save the file, run the file. So now it is giving us false. This tells us that the word Dubai is not present inside our string. That's how dot include method works. The next method is dot slice. Dot slice method is basically extract a specific part of the string that we want. In our case, if I want to extract this Arab word from my string, so how I can do this? I can use console.log place.slice. Inside slice method, I need to pass two parameters. First, from where to start, and the second, where I want to end. So let's do this. In our case, our first parameter is 7 and our last parameter is 12. So I want that the slice method will start from the 7th character and ends at the 12th character. So let's save the file, run the file. So now you see the Arab word will be extracted from my string. This is my string and this is my output. The next method is concatenation. So what is concatenation? So let's create a variable A, and let's create another variable B, second string. So now I want to combine these two strings. So how to? If I use console.log and I want to combine these two strings, so I can write first a dot concat. There is a method concat. So now inside that concat method, I need to specify the string that we want to concatenate with the a. So in our case, that string is b. B is a string type. Now you will see both the strings will be combined together. So let's save the file and run the file. First string, second string. But there is no space between two strings. So if I want to add space between string, for adding space between both of them, we can write a space in the double quotes and adding this space before the variable b. So let's save the file and run the file. So now you will see there will be a space between both string. So you see first string and second string. Now there is a space. So that is how we can combine two strings using concat method. We can also combine two strings by using the plus operator. For example, if I write a plus and I want to add space, so I write a space in double quotes and again plus and I write b. So now you will see again two strings will be combined and there is a space between both of them. So if I save the file, if I comment this first one and save the file and run the file. So you see again both the strings will be combined together and there is a space between both of them. So these are some mostly used string methods that we use while operating with the strings. Strings are used everywhere, displaying messages, taking inputs from users, storing user data, user names, user emails, and user passwords, and processing the text data. Strings are used. Mastering strings operations will make your JavaScript journey very smooth. Now let's see the second data type, which is number. In JavaScript, the number data type is used to represent both integers and floating point numbers. Floating point numbers are decimal numbers. So number is used to represent both integers and decimal type of numbers. Let's go to the VS Code screen and let's see how we can create the number data type and how we can use them. So in VS Code, let's create a variable. Let age is equal to 29 and create another variable. Let price is equal to 199.99. So now the age is having the integer data type while the price is having the decimal type. But the data type of both will be treated as number data type. So here you see that this is an integer type, a decimal type, but the data type for both is number. So if we want to check, so we can console.log type of age, type of price. So now if I save the file and run the file, so you can see the data type for both is number. For age, which is an integer type, and for price, which is an decimal type or floating point number, the data type for both is number. In JavaScript, the number data type also includes some special values that are infinity, minus infinity, and nan, which is not a number. So how to check this? In JavaScript, if we divide any number by 0, we get infinity, which is known as positive infinity or plus infinity. So if I divide any number like 23 by 0, so what we will get? If I save the file and we will run the file, so you see we get the infinity. Similarly, if we divide any negative number by 0, we get negative infinity. So how to check this? Let's copy this line, paste here. Instead of 23, I write minus 23. So let's save the file, run the file. So you see, first we get infinity and the later we get minus infinity. The next one is nan, which is not a number. Nan or nan represents an invalid number operation. If we do some some kind of operation on the number which is invalid, then we will get the nan. For example, here if I write any integer number which is like 43 and I want to divide this integer by text. So if I want to divide the integer by text, so if I write any text the way, so this is an invalid operation. I am dividing 43 by a text data. So this is an invalid operation. So in this case, we will get the nan data type or nan. So if I save the file and run the file, so you see, we get nan, which is nan. So this is saying that this operation is not a number. It is not a number operation. So when we perform some invalid operation on the number data type, we will get a special data type which is a nan, which is called as not a number. JavaScript provides some useful methods and properties with the numbers. So let's see one by one. So let me create first a variable. Let price is equal to 123.674244. So this is the price variable. I want only 2 digits after the decimal point. So for this, I will use .toFixed method. So how to use this? Console.log and price.toFixed. In the toFixed method, I need to specify that how much digits I want after the decimal. So in my case, I want 2. So I write 2 here. Let's save the file. Run the file. So you see, I want only 2 digits. So 123.67. The rest of the 4 digits will be skipped. So this is how we can use toFixed method. This method is very useful while we are creating some e-commerce application. And so .toFixed method is mostly used when we are specifying the result after the decimal point. So this is mostly used in the projects where we want to show the price to the user, like some e-commerce application or anywhere we want to show some price. So this is how we can use the .toFixed method. So let's create a variable a is equal to 23. And now we want to convert this data type into string format. So how to do this? If we write console.log and a.toString. So here, if we write a.toString, so now the value of this variable. So now the value of this variable, which is a and it is a number data type, this data type is converted into string format. So how to check this? So if I write here typeof a.toString, so now you will see that if I save the file and if I run the file, so you can see the data type is converted into string format. The next method is number.isInteger. This method is mostly used when we want to specifically check that the number we are getting, this is an integer format or not. For example, a lot of time it is happening that the number we are getting, that is not in the integer type, that is in the string format. So here, if I again create a variable, so here you see I created a variable age that is in string format. Now I want to check that this age variable is having a number data type or not. So how to check this? If I console.log, so I write number.isInteger. So inside isInteger method, I write the name of the variable age. So now it will tell us that either the age variable is having the number data type or not. So it will return the Boolean value, either true or false. If the age variable is having the integer type, it will return true. If it is not the integer type, it will return false. So let's save the variable and we will run the file. So you see, it is returning false. Why? Because our variable, which is age, that is a string data type. So it is returning the false. So if I convert this variable into an number data type. Now if I save the file and now if I run the file, so now you will see. Now this time it is actually an integer number, and when we are checking this method, it will returning true. So now it is saying that yes, this age variable is having an integer number. So the next method is number. This method is mostly we used when we want to convert strings into number format. So how to convert this? So I convert the age variable into string format. So now I want to convert it into the number format. So let's create another variable, let age 2, and here I am using this number function, number. So inside number function, I specify the variable, a string variable that we want to convert into number. So here I write age. So now if I check the data type of the age 2, console.log and type of age 2. So we can also console the type of age. If I write here, we can using concatenation. So age 2 value. So here I am checking the type of the age 2 variable and age variable. So if I save the file and run the file, so here you see the age 2 variable is having the data type of number, while the age variable is having the data type of string. So now this is the age variable having the string data type, and this is the age 2 variable in which we parse the age variable but we use a number function. So the number function convert the string format into the number format. So the next method is parse int. This method we used when we convert the floating point numbers into the integers. So let's create a variable. Let price is equal to 244.4534. So this is the variable price having the floating point number, and we want to convert this price, this floating point number is into an integer number. So for this we write console.log and we use the parseInt function, and inside parseInt function we will write the name of the variable that we want to convert into an integer number. If I save the file and I will run the file, so you see I am getting an integer number which is only 244. The parseInt function will ignore all the numbers after the decimal point. So parseInt function we use to convert the floating point number into integer numbers. Similarly, if we want to convert the integers or the strings into floating point numbers, if I write again price 2, and that will be in the string format, and this will be 345.5434. So now if I console this and I want to convert this price to into floating point, so I will use parse float, and I will write the variable name which is price 2. So now you will see if I save the file and run the file, so you see in the first one it is giving 244, while in the second one it is giving me the complete value, all the numbers after the decimal. So these are the methods that we are using with the number data type. Numbers are used in almost every program for calculations, for timers, for showing prices, for measurements, ID, even in logic comparisons we are using numbers. Mastering how numbers works in JavaScript is essential for every software engineer. The next data type is Boolean data type. In JavaScript, the Boolean data type represents a logical entity and can have only two values, true or false. These values are commonly used for decision making, conditions, comparisons, and control flow in the code. So now let's see how we can declare a Boolean. So we can create a variable, let bool, is equal to. So if we want to create a Boolean data type, we can use only two values. Either we can write true, either we can write false. So if I write here true, now this will convert it into Boolean data type. So if I check the data type, console.log type of bool. So this will give us that what is the data type of the bool variable. So if I save this, run the file, so you see we are getting the data type Boolean. Similarly, if I change it to false, if I write false and I save the file, run the file, so you see it will again giving the data type Boolean. But be careful, because the true or the false, which is written in the form of string format, that is not treated as a Boolean data type. For example, if I write the true value in the string format, then the type of bool is not the Boolean data type. Then the type of bool will be string format, string data type. In this case, the type of bool, the data type of the bool variable will be string. So if I save the file and if I run the file, so you see the data type is representing as the string format. So we need true or false without string format. For declaring the Boolean data type, we write without string either true or false. Then it will be treated as a Boolean variable. Boolean data types are widely used in conditional statements to control the flow of the code. For example, let age is equal to 20, and I write an if statement that if age variable is less than 18, then console.log else console.log. In this case, the condition age less than 18, this will be evaluated to a Boolean data type, which is a false. On this basis, the output will be printed. So if we save the file and if I run the file, so you see, welcome, you are eligible. So the second console.log will be printed. Why? So what is happening here? We specify that if this condition will be true, then console this one. If this condition will be false, then print this one. So our condition is false because we specify that age is 20 and 20 less than 18, which is a false statement. So this console.log will be printed. So we can also use the Boolean data type to control the flow of our code. Similarly, all the comparison operations return a Boolean value. For example, if I write here console.log and I write 34 is greater than 45, which is a false statement. So let me comment this. So if I save the file and if I run the file, so you see I will get false. So why? Because this condition is false. Similarly, if I console.log and I write that is 5 greater than 3, so this is a true statement. So now I will get true. So if I again run the file, so you see the first one is false and the second one is true. JavaScript can convert other data types to Boolean using a Boolean function or in conditional context. For example, if I console.log boolean, I write Boolean and 0. So using Boolean function, I want to convert 0 into a Boolean data type. So what I will get, and now if I save the file, if I run the code, so I will get Boolean data type, which is false. If I want to convert 0 into Boolean data type by using Boolean function, we will get false. If I write console.log and if I use again Boolean function and I want to convert 1 into Boolean data type, so what I will get? So now if I save the file and I run the file, so you see the next one I get true. If I want to convert 0 into Boolean, I will get false. If I want to convert 1 into Boolean, I will get true. So what if instead of 1, there will be 100, or I can write any other integer which is a 67. So if I save the file and if I run the file, so you see we will get true. So if we want to convert any integer into Boolean data type, and it will give us true. But if we want to convert 0 into Boolean data type, it will give us false. Similarly, this can also work with the strings. If I want to convert an empty string into Boolean data type, so how to? So if I use a Boolean function and I want to convert an empty string into Boolean data type, and if I save the file, I run the file, so you see we get false. If I want to convert empty string into Boolean data type, we will get false. So if I want to convert this text data into Boolean data type, so what I will get? So let's run this one. So now I will get true. So now you see that if we want to convert 0 into Boolean data type, we will get false. Here I can write false. And if we want to convert an integer data type, any integer into Boolean data type, we will get true. Similarly, in case of string, if we want to convert empty string into Boolean data type, it will give us false. And if we want to convert a text data into Boolean data type, it will give us the true. So let's save this. And finally, if I run this file, so you see, first one is false, second one is true, third one is false, and fourth one is true. So you see this one. While converting the other data types into the Boolean state or Boolean data type, 0, empty string, null, undefined, and nan, which is not a number, this will give us the false, while all the other values will be converted into true. We will check the null and undefined and nan. For example, if we console.log and we will use Boolean function and we want to convert null into Boolean. So now we should get the false value. So if I save the file and if I run the file, so you see we will get the false value. So but instead of null, I will write undefined. Again, I should get false. So you see, again I am getting the false. What instead of undefined, I will write nan, which is not a number. So let's save this one, run the file. Again, I'm getting false. Okay. So if we want to convert 0, empty string, null, undefined, or nan, not a number, into Boolean data type, we will get false, and all the other values will be converted into true. Why Booleans are important? Booleans are essential for conditional execution, like we see that in the if-else statement or a switch case statement, Booleans are used. While working with the loops, Booleans are very important. We did not cover the loops, we will cover in the later video. So while working with the loops, that we have a for loop, we have a while loop, do while loop, the Booleans are also important. And also that when we are working with the logical operations, that AND operation, OR operation, we will discuss later all of these. So the controlling features like enabling, disabling buttons, or toggling the UI components in the application, those all things are happening with the help of the Boolean statements or with the help of Boolean data types. Now discuss the next data type, which is null data type. In JavaScript, null is a special primitive data type that represents no value or empty value intentionally assigned by the programmer. Whenever programmers is assigning null value to any variable, so this means they are explicitly saying that this variable has no value. For example, let's create a variable. Let's student is equal to null. Here I create a variable student and assigning a null value to it. So here I am saying to the compiler that hey, there is no value to the student variable. So the student variable has no value. It means null value. So if I console this variable, console.log, and if I console student, so you will see we will get null value. So if I run the code, so you see we are getting null value. In this case, I declare the student variable and assigning a null value to it. It indicates that currently it has no value, but it may be assigned later. It may be assigned in the future. There is an interesting thing. In JavaScript, the type of null returns an object. This is a historical bug in the language that was never been fixed for backward compatibility. For example, if I write here console.log and I want to check the variable type of null. So if I want to check the data type of null variable, if I save the file and if I run the file, so you see it will return object. The type of null is object. So it is an interesting thing that null is itself a data type, but its data type is an object. We use null data type to initialize a variable as empty intentionally, or whenever we want to reset an object or a variable to clear a reference when an object is no longer needed to free up memory in larger application, or we see in the larger frameworks that there we can use this one. So for example, if I create an object user and inside this object I write here name, which is my name. I'm adding role, which is I can write programmer. So now here, if I want to reset this object, so if I console this one, console.log user, and if I save the file, if I run the file, you see I'm getting the value of the object. If I want to reset the user object, so what I will do, I will assign null value to the user object. So now the user will be having null value. If I assign this value to user2 and console.log user2, and now I should get the value of user2 as null. So if I write the code, so you see the value of user, I am getting the full object. So when I am assigning the null value to the user object will be resetted. It will be null value. Now you see the user object has all the values of the object, while the user2 is having the null value. Why? Because in this line, I am explicitly saying that assign the null value to the user object. So that's why the user object will become empty. So the next data type that we discuss, that is undefined. So what is undefined? In JavaScript, undefined is a primitive data type that represents a variable that has been declared but has not yet been assigned any value. When we are declaring a variable without assigning a value to it, the JavaScript compiler automatically assigns it to the value undefined. So let's come to the VS Code and discuss that how undefined works. So here in the VS Code, let's initialize a variable. Let's city. So now I initialize the variable, but I am not assigning any value to this variable. So now if I check the data type of this variable, so for checking data type, we just simply console.log and we write type of city. So let's save it and we will run the code. So you see the data type of this variable whose value is not being initialized, the data type of this variable is undefined. Now you may ask that what is the difference between null and undefined? So null is the data type when we explicitly say that, hey, there is no value. But undefined is the data type when we are not assigning any value. For example, the variable that we create, city, if I assign the null value to it, now I am assigning the value null to the city variable. Now the type of city will become null. So if I save the file and if I run the code, it is giving an object. So why it is giving an object? Because the data type of null is an object. We discussed earlier that the data type of the null is an object. So for example, if I am not checking the type, I am just only logging the value. So now we will get null value. So you see, we will get the null value. But if I did not tell that this value is null and I just initialize the variable without assigning any value. So in this case, if I am logging the value will become undefined. So if I run the code, so you see, we are getting the value of undefined. Now we will see the undefined as a function return value. So what does it mean? Let's create a function f1. I am creating an arrow function. So this is the function that I declare. So if I am not returning any value from this function, the value of this function will be undefined. For example, if I save the function and now I am logging the value of f1. So in this case, the value of f1 will be undefined. Why? Because we are not returning any value inside the body of the function. So if I run the code, so you see, we are getting undefined. Why? Because we are not returning any value. So whenever a function did not return any value, its value will be undefined. JavaScript automatically detects that this function is not returning any value. So JavaScript compiler automatically returns the value undefined. Similarly, another case that when we are trying to access an object property that does not exist, it will also return the undefined value. For example, let me comment this. If I create an object, let user is equal to name and role will be software engineer. So now here, if I console.log and I write user.name, I will get the name. Similarly, if I write user.role, I will get the role. So let's save this and here run the code. So you see, I am getting name also and I am getting the role also. But what if I am trying to access the value that is not exist? For example, I did not mention the age of the user. So if here I write user.age, okay, so if I save this and if I try to run the code, so you see, I'm getting the name, I'm getting the role, but here user.age, this value will be undefined. Why the user.age is returning undefined? Because I am trying to access the property of the object that did not exist. This property did not exist in the object. So that's why it is returning undefined. Now we will see the next data type, which is symbol. In JavaScript, symbol is a primitive data type which is introduced in ES6. It is used to create unique and immutable values, often used as an object property keys to avoid naming conflicts. It is created using the symbol function. So symbol is basically used when we want to create unique things, when we want to create unique object properties or unique variables. So at that time we are using symbol function. So let's go to the VS Code and we will see how it works. So in VS Code, let's see how we can create the unique values using symbol function. So here in VS Code, let's create a variable. Let id is equal to, so I'm using symbol function to creating user id. So here I create a variable id using symbol function. So if I console this, console.log and I am logging its value. So what I will get? I will not get the user ID. I will get symbol function user ID. And if I run the code, so you see, I am getting symbol function user ID. Here, user ID is just a description for debugging and readability. Each symbol is guaranteed to be unique even if they have the same description. Here, user ID is a description. So if they have the same description, if we create the other variable using the same description, they both will be unique. For example, if I create id2 and again I'm using symbol function. So inside symbol function, I am putting the same description as before. So now you see symbol user ID, both are the two variables. Okay, so now I am checking that is id variable, which is first one, is equal to id2 because both are having the same value. Okay, so if I save this, if I run the file, so you see it is getting false. Why? Because they both are unique. Both variable are having the unique values because symbol function make them unique even they have the same description, even they have the same value. So now let's discuss the next data type, which is BigInt. In JavaScript, BigInt is a primitive data type which is introduced in ES 2020. It is used to represent integers larger than the safe limit of number data type. Okay, so what is the safe limit? In JavaScript, the number data type can safely store integers that are up to 2 to the power 53 minus 1. So this is the maximum limit where the number data type can safely store the values. Beyond this limit, it cannot represent them accurately due to precision limitations. So beyond this limit, which is the 2 to the power 53 minus 1, beyond this limit, if we want to create an integers, we need BigInt. So how to create BigInt? There are two ways of creating BigInt. Number one is using the literal n. Number two is using the BigInt constructor. So let's go to the VS Code and we will check how we can create those BigInt. So here in the VS Code, let's create a number which is integer, and we can create a big number, very big number. We can write this again. So this is the integer that we create. So if I increase value, so here you see three dots. If I zoom in, so you can see that there are three dots. So what these three dots are saying? These are saying numeric literals with absolute values equal to 2 to the power 53 or greater are too large to be represented accurately as integers. So the compiler is saying that this number is too large to represent the value as an integer. So now for converting this into BigInt, what we use our first method. So at the end of the value, we just write simple n. So now you see three dots are vanished. If I remove the n, again warning is coming that it is too large. But if I write the n, then this variable is converted into BigInt. If I log the type of this variable, if I save the file and I run the code, so you see the type of this variable is number. Okay. But if I converted this into BigInt by writing this n, so now if I check this type, the type of this variable is integer. So now if I run the file, now you see the type is BigInt. Now the data type of this variable int is converted into BigInt, but before the data type was number. Now let's see that how we can create a BigInt using the BigInt constructor. So let's create another variable, integer 2 is equal to, we are using the BigInt constructor. So I am copying this, and here inside the BigInt constructor, I need to specify this value in the string format. Okay. So now if I log the type of integer 2, if I save the file and if I run the code, so you see both the variables having the data type BigInt. So these are the two methods for creating BigInt data type. The number one using literal n, the number two using the BigInt constructor. So we can also perform some arithmetic operations like addition, subtraction, or multiplication, and also the division with the BigInt values. For example, if I write here the first BigInt plus the second BigInt. If I add these two variables and both are having the data type BigInt, so it is allowed. It is completely allowed. Okay, so if I save the file and I run the code, so you see the answer will be coming, but the answer will be coming in the form of BigInt. But here is the thing that we cannot directly mix BigInt and the number data types in operations. If we do so, we will get an error. For example, if I create another variable, let integer 3, and this will be a simple integer, which is a small one, and it is a simple integer. So now if I try to add also this one in the variable integer 3, so now I will get an error. Why? Because these both two are the big data type and this is the number data type. Okay, it is also mentioned here in the compiler. It is number, it is BigInt, and this is also BigInt. So we cannot mix BigInt and number data type. If I save the file and if I try to run the file, so you see, we will get an error. What is the error? Cannot mix BigInt and other types. Use explicit conversions at. Okay. So we can explicitly convert those data types. Either we convert this number data type into BigInt, or either we convert this BigInt into the number data type. The next thing is BigInt in comparison. We can compare BigInt and number data types, number values using the comparison operator. For example, we take these two variables, integer 3 and integer 2. So now in comparison operator, I am checking that either integer 2, which is a BigInt data type, is it greater than the integer 3, which is a number data type. If I save the file, if I run the file, so you see, it is giving us true. Yes, this is true because integer 2 having this value is greater than this value. So it is clearly we see that this value is much bigger than this one. So if we check that is integer 2 is less than integer 3, which is a false, so we should get false. If I run the code, so you see we are getting false. So the next thing is, are there any limitations while we are working with the BigInt? Yes, there are some limitations that when we are working with the BigInt. The first one is we cannot use BigInt with the math functions, like we have math.square root function. So while we are working with the math functions, we cannot use the BigInt. So the second is BigInt is not supported in the JSON.stringify. So when we are working with the JSON.stringify, the BigInt is not supported in this function. So these are the limitations when we are working with the BigInt data type. That's it for today's video, where we explored all the primitive data types like string, number, Boolean, null, undefined, symbol, and BigInt. Understanding these data types is crucial for building a solid foundation in JavaScript and writing clean, bug-free code. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with your fellow developers. Also comment below which data type you are using the most in your projects, or if you have any question about today's topic, you can write in the comment. I will see you in the next video with more easy explanation to strengthen your JavaScript skills. Thanks for watching, and until then, keep coding and keep growing.